without further ado, let's get into this. What is the updating information on the vaccines that you know as a virologist, not as a COVID expert, like we were saying, but what is the update of those numbers? Has there been more than just anaphylactic shock?
Yeah, I mean, so there's been some cases of adverse reactions that have gone through the system still. Yeah, you made a really good point. When we first talked about this was within the first weeks, maybe month or so of the vaccines being out. And so what we were talking about with the anaphylactic shock was that we were seeing an increased rate of maybe like, I don't even remember what the number was at that point, like 5 maybe in a million. For every million cases, there was maybe 5 cases of anaphylaxis that was popping up at the very beginning. As more people got the vaccine, we saw those numbers steady and come plateau, I guess is the word, back out to like more normal numbers of around 1 in a million, 2 in a million, which is pretty much the general rate for any severe adverse reaction. And to clarify again, anaphylaxis, while it is scary, is treatable. And to the best of my knowledge, I do not know anybody who has died from anaphylaxis from this. Normally, that's why you wait after you get the vaccine. You wait for like 15 to 30 minutes. It normally sets on pretty quickly. Get an epi shot, a little Benadryl, you're all good to go. So yeah, that is the clarification for that. But yeah, the most common side effects that people are getting from these vaccines, if they're getting side effects or symptoms, I guess, of them, are just going to be soreness, redness at the site of infection, fever, chills, body aches and pains, and just like this excessive tiredness. I got both of my doses and it leveled me. The second dose that I got, I was just so tired. My body felt like I had just done like 2-a-days for like a week straight that night. But then all of these symptoms pretty much resolve themselves within 24 to 72 hours.
So, like we said, this is just from the point of view of virologists, but have you seen any, or has anyone reported any deaths or any of other side effects rather than anaphylaxis from? Now it becomes controversial when we talk about Johnson & Johnson, right? Let's backtrack before that question. What happened with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Because I don't really know. I just know that they pulled it. What was going on before they pulled it?
Yeah, so I think that this is a great example of how attuned to the safety of these vaccines that we actually are when people are questioning safety. So what happened with the Johnson & Johnson was that out of 7.8 million doses of Johnson & Johnson that were given, there were 7 cases that were identified in young middle-aged women who had blood clots. And this was associated with the vaccine. So 7 out of 7.8 million is like less than a 1 in a million occurrence, which is pretty low. I was actually surprised that they pulled it, but it was a big enough deal that they said, hey, we need to investigate this. And so that's what they did. They pulled it out, they investigated it. They said, hey, it does look like there's an association with this. And so they said, it's not happening in men and in these other populations. So we're just gonna put a restriction or warning on it. So if you fall into this category where you have an elevated risk of blood clots, maybe don't get the Johnson & Johnson, opt for another one, but it seems to be safe for all of these other people. So let's get this back out there. So I really love that because Johnson & Johnson's like the gold standard of vaccines, right? It's 1 dose. You don't have to keep it at those super cold temperatures. It's really easy and accessible to get out to the public. And the fact that we were willing, I say colloquially, scientists, whoever, but the fact that they were willing to pause this like the end all be all of vaccines of like what we'd like to give people. And they're willing to pause it because of a less than 1 in a million rate of something happening to investigate to make sure that it's safe. I think that really speaks to how well we're tracking all of these adverse effects and making sure that these vaccines that we're giving to people are safe.
I apologize if I didn't hear you say this or I wasn't paying close enough attention. Did you say why it was middle-aged women, young middle-aged women?
I did not say, and I personally don't know. So I was telling you at the beginning of this show, when we first talked, I think I was more lumped in with the COVID experts. I was staying really up to date with everything that was coming out. And, for selfish reasons, after getting vaccinated and posting everything that I could about this, I've kind of like tapered off on what I've been reading, what I've been following up on. And so more of what I'm going to say, more or less, is just going to be what I know just from what I've read, but I'm not like following completely and making sure I know every single paper that's coming out on it. So I'm really talking more as a virologist and a COVID expert here.
Yeah. So while we're on the subject of vaccines, I want to get back to what we're seeing, the numbers and everything. But did you see what Joe Rogan said about young people? that took off and the White House kind of, can you
Was this the thing where he was just like, young people should just get COVID, like it doesn't matter, they're not getting sick? Is this the thing you're talking
I
about?
think he said, yeah, I think it was more like he said, if young people, if you're like 21, healthy, eat healthy, work out, if you're 21, don't get the vaccine. So I think it is something like
Oh,
that. Can you, all right, say if that's wrong, why that's wrong, and what is the correct thing? Should everyone get the vaccine? I know you're saying that it is better to get the vaccine, but can you just clarify why that is wrong and what should happen with young people?
yeah. So that is wrong, and the reason being is that the vaccine gives you protection without you having to be infected with the virus. If you get infected with the virus, no matter what, whether or not you're asymptomatic, no symptoms, or you have severe COVID, you have a living virus inside of you that's replicating. And every time it's doing that, it's killing cells, it's doing damage. And we know the effects of this virus. We don't know what all of the long-term effects could be. You could be asymptomatic and still have effects that show up later down the road because you had a live virus that was doing damage inside of you, even though you didn't know. So it would be much better to get the vaccine to generate that protection than to expose yourself to a virus and say, I'm young and healthy, because this virus, it affects your cardiovascular system. So we're seeing reports of men having erectile dysfunction. We're seeing reports of increased strokes. We're seeing reports of it affecting the brain and links with Alzheimer's and things like that. And so on top of it already attacking your respiratory system, which is what we commonly think about this, right? People getting vented. But it's not just stopping there. It's able to infect all sorts of places in your body because you have that receptor ACE2 all over. So if you have the option of being like, am I just gonna think that I'm young and healthy and like risk getting an infection that I don't know what's going to happen? Or would I rather go and get a shot or two shots where I'm not going to get infected by this virus and then I'm going to have protection in case that virus comes in, so it doesn't like do as much damage to fuck me up as much as it could if I was unprotected?
So now that we know, because I remember I backtracked about the Johnson and Johnson. So now that we know that that was the Johnson and Johnson, why they pulled it was because of the seven women who had the blood clots. Now let's go to just the vaccines in general. So mainly Pfizer and Moderna. Have we seen any deaths, any other forms of autoimmune disorders? Because remember they were talking about lupus. Did that happen? Was it not a causation? Could it have been a causation? What have we seen, to your knowledge, with these viruses or vaccines that are not that common but still happened?
Yeah, I wish that I could give you a more in-depth like synopsis of all of the, and when I say all of, like probably the handful of random things that happen. So there's what is that? Thrombocytopenia, I think is what it's called. So you see this really drastic decrease in your white blood cells, and this can be dangerous. I know I've heard of some cases of this occurring after the vaccination. Again, very rare, and you got to keep an eye out on that. What are I don't know off the top of my head though. I guess there's not been a lot of really prominent things that have popped into my news feed, at least of things that I've been like, oh, I should be more wary of this, at least in what's coming along. This is not very helpful to what you're asking, I feel like.
No, it's okay. That like we said, this is more of a virologist talking to me, not really a COVID expert. But can we just talk to the people for a second and myself and explain to us from a virologist standpoint why it is more important to get the vaccine? Because you did say that COVID, we have all these complications with COVID that we don't know down the line. But disregarding COVID, why is it more important when we do have a vaccine to take a vaccine than it is to get a specific, because they do range from all different things, all different types of diseases, all different types of sicknesses you can get. But why is it important to have vaccines and why are vaccines important?
I mean, plain and simply, if you want a soundbite, it's vaccines save lives. So you can very easily go in Google and look up things like, I don't know, diphtheria or polio, smallpox. I mean, even the flu, you see the decrease in that. But you can look at the rates of these diseases that we used to have, measles, mumps, pertussis, and the people that got really sick from these, the people that were dying from these before the vaccine era. And then you see the introduction of vaccines and you see these diseases just almost disappear. I mean, there's still sporadic cases that you'll see, but in the best case scenario, they're completely gone. Smallpox is like our promised child, and polio is thought to be gone by next year. So polio pretty much just pops up in like India. I think there's a small population in like maybe the Southeast China, Middle East area, because there was a scare around the polio vaccine, the live attenuated one, like causing polio in people, which doesn't matter. It doesn't do that. If it's not inactivated though, you can have problems. And so there was a scare around that. And so there was this anti-polio vax movement that allowed polio numbers to start coming back up. But then as polio numbers started coming back up and people who were unvaccinated, they realized, oh, wow, the vaccinated people aren't getting polio. Maybe I should get the vaccine again. And now we're seeing people taking vaccines, and polio will probably be gone from this planet in humans. Definitely. The WHO thinks by 2022. I would venture 2025 is a safe bet. So within the next 3 to 5 years.
So